Secret friends, unite!
Welcome to the Secret Friends Unite podcast, episode 418. This is your guide to the geek side, and I am one of your hosts, Todd Oxtra, from beautiful, savage, and still snowy Minnesota. And joined by the man who's interrupting me, Charlie Carden, the interruptor.
Interrupticus Rex. Now, I'm highlighting my studio because this is the first, maybe the first time I've done this show that I'm in my beautiful new space with my beautiful, very not yet done background. The other side of what's over here is not done, but this is all done, which I'm very excited about. So yay! Good to be back from the cruise, Star Trek cruise. They had their own theme song, so it's stuck in your brain forever.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God. Extra, if you ever get the chance, a cruise is 5 vacations in one with no stress. Because you don't have to, once you're on the ship, you don't have to be anywhere. You don't have to travel to get anywhere. You just walk. Walking is, for most people, easy. You can get food whenever you want. And with this, it was a Star Trek con because there was programming and variety shows and comedy shows and karaoke and trivia, which April and I won twice. Of the 4 trivias they did, I won 2 of them. It was fantastic, and we're going
all those years of Star Trek watching. Charlie finally paid off.
I did. We got two backpacks out of it, and calendars and some books and stuff. And so yeah, those were the prizes. But yeah, it was an amazing time. If you're a Trekker and you want to know more about the cruise, hit me up on Twitter at the C3. I'll tell you all about it.
Yeah, and I will be doing the exact opposite, Charlie. I will be going to Europe with approximately 150 students for my son's European music tour. Also, the choir is going to. But I am the tag-along groupie, so I'll just be following that group along. I'm not staying at the same hotel. I'm on different flights. It's going to be the weirdest family vacation ever.
I've been scratching my head about that, but you know what? As you always say to me, you do you. It seems weird, but you are in Europe. I'm not
a chaperone. If I can't be a chaperone, I either don't go on the trip or I do it this way. So, you know.
Yeah. So you're going to be the guy in the back with the sign. Woo!
Pretty much. Yeah. We will connect with the kids and the chaperones throughout the trip every day, essentially with all the meals and things like that, which is nice. But yeah, but that one is going to be, you are scheduled from like 6:30 in the morning until like 9:30 at night.
Oh,
every night.
That does not actually sound like a lot of fun. But whatever, you're in Europe. I've only ever been to the UK, Ireland.
It's the best way to knock out all those places. If you don't do it that way, you'll see like 2 things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not like, in America where it's like, I woke up this morning driving in Texas and it's 6:00 and I'm still driving in Texas. When you're in Europe, you drive different places because they're all close by. But anyway, we should move along by giving some love to our Patreons. Oh my goodness. And it's on the grow. The word is catching on. I know I'm not trying to oversaturate on my personal social media. I have a schedule when we do it every 2 or 3 weeks that I put a shout out there, which I did this morning. But
the friend zone. But these are our entry level Patreons. So thank you for joining us. We've got CJ. He's the co-host for Hour One Decision. He was just on with me last week, filling in for Charlie. So thank you, Mr. Chris, for joining us on our Patreon journey. We've got Sarah Reamer, someone that I don't know. We really kind of have not figured out where we know Sarah from or how she discovered us. So Sarah, you've got your intro to the Discord and everything like that. So please be part of the group, or if you don't want to, that's fine as well. Same thing with another new friend zone member. That's Beej Metz. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. Don't know the person, but thank you for joining, and we'd like to get to know you better.
You bet. We've got your friend of mine, Jamie Prinky, on our best buds level. And then, of course, our BFFs, our top tier folks. That would be the awesome Nias family, Sean, Stella, and Henry, and your friend and mine, friend of the network, Missy Merchant, who I'm actually recording with after we wrap up here because she is a frequent collaborator too. So we love all of you guys. It's easy to become part of our Patreon. There's lots of different levels depending on what you dig. Visit us at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite for all those great details. And Todd, I just noticed of this great new cover that we're going to be talking about. I don't talk about my brother a lot, but this comic came out the week he was born, the first week of October, 1974, talking about Marvel Spotlight. The son of Satan, Damian Hellstrom, is the star of this. And what do we got going on here? This seems very 70s. You got somebody sitting in what do they call the pentagram? It's not pentagram. What is she sitting in? She's got the candles. She's doing a seance or whatever.
Pentagram, I assume the five star. It's like the upside down version of the Star of David, of course.
Yeah, right.
Because you don't want that to be a little weird and crazy. I
Weird.
was just surprised in this, and it says, Damon. This is this woman is seancing or bringing a demon forth. It says, Damon Hellstrom, if you seek to rob me of this girl's soul, then I'll take yours instead.
Well,
Madhouse, a tale of exorcism and of demonic possession. So now I don't see, I do see it's approved by the comics group, but wasn't the whole point of the comics group like to keep like demonology, Satanism, and things out of comics?
I thought that was more in the 50s. It was like language or whatever, or probably homosexuality because it was.
But it was like supernatural elements too. Like,
I don't know.
Maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, that would take some research, but really the comics code was kind of good for nothing. And I don't even know that it exists anymore because really you have comics of so many different stripes and really all of your original or OC comic readers are people who are our age and older who don't need the comics code. So, so it's kind of silly, but yeah, for 1974, having something that is in your face with the words demonic possession on the cover of the comic is, I will admit that it's a little surprising, but you know what? Cool. That's what was going on when my brother, Rob, came into the world in the beginning of October 1974. How interesting.
Yeah. And fun fact, there was actually a Hellstrom TV show on Hulu, one of the few last non-MCU shows, and it was about a brother and a sister called Hellstrom, and nobody watched it. I didn't even. We talked about it. I didn't know that it ever came. That it's out there. Is it out there? That's still crazy. On Hulu, I believe. Yeah.
Oh my God. Charlie. All right. Well, maybe we should have a little micro collab and listen to it. But anyway, or we could do this. We could dispatch our faithful employee who we pay a nickel a week. I'm talking about our news correspondent, our senior news correspondent at 123 years young. That would be Madam Webb down at the corner of Hollywood and Vine, which I did not visit when I was in LA, but I have to so that I can say hello next time. I'm talking about Madam Webb. She's got the rumors and news for us. So let's go.
Now it's time for Madam Webb's Rumors and News. Take it away, boys.
Thank you, Madam Webb. Madam Webb, it's the Oscar season. We've got the big show tonight. They've removed the red carpet, put in the champagne carpet, which I know that annoys you, Madam Webb. You always make people take their shoes off when they go on your carpet because, when a Solomon Grundy shows up, doesn't wipe his feet, it's disgusting.
No,
how are they going to keep that champagne carpet clean, Madam Webb? But give us your cleaning tips the next time we'll hang out and we'll talk about cleaning.
I've got it. It'll be a fire hose. Oh, my goodness. Anyway, all right, what do we got up first? We got your feel-good superhero favorite and mine, a character you've always been iffy on. That is the Punisher. Love the actor, though. John Bernthal, who played the role in the Netflix series in the last couple of years, is returning for Disney Plus's Daredevil Born Again, which is going into production pretty soon. This was news this week. Now, I am assuming this is it's a total reboot. We're not carrying over any continuity from what happened at Netflix, because that was not the vibe that we got out of seeing the Matt Murdock character as Daredevil in She-Hulk. It was like it was totally new. He had a different outfit. He wasn't quite so fighting guys in a hallway and getting stabbed a bunch. So I assume this is pretty much all new.
Well, the Daredevil show is going to be called Born Again. There is a comic run based on that, but I only think they're using the name to represent kind of what this is for Daredevil and the characters within that Netflix universe. I assume, and based on what you said, Charlie, I agree. I think this is essentially going to be the multiverse version of Daredevil. Reason why he showed up in a different costume, lighter, more comedic, taking on the different aspects of Daredevil we've gotten from the comics. It's not all just the Frank Miller run, which I think everybody's familiar with, but he's had many more years since that. He's taken on weird supervillains like the Owl, not the Owl accountant in the Netflix series. Mr. Hyde, more of the different aspects of Daredevil are broad and wide. He became like I think he became like the evil overlord of Hell's Kitchen at one point, when he became like Dark Daredevil. So he's done many things, and we've had his story already told with, and I don't know if it's of value to revisit that or bring those things in, because I would say the Netflix series was always so thinly connected. It was like, oh, they showed something on a screen. that you can just ignore it, because by all means, the MCU movies definitely ignored the Netflix series.
Well, and it was, I know they had Ben Urich, who was a Daily Bugle writer. I don't think he wrote for the Daily Bugle, or maybe he did, but he had a framed copy of a headline that said "Attack on New York" like in the corner of his office, and then Stan Lee appeared in the post office on a wanted poster, Employee of the Month or something. So it was just like, oh, we got you a little Easter egg. But yeah, there was nothing. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., they dwindled it down to the point that it was divorced from the continuity altogether.
Yes,
and it was his own little pocket deal. So
yeah,
yep.
So we are getting, I think it's also being part of the MCU. I don't think you can have the Punisher be essentially a murderous madman, and people are just like, oh, that's okay. He's kind of a good guy. You just got to get to know him after he killed people. No, I think they're going to reset.
Get to know him. Yeah,
exactly. I think Bernthal, they got his face, bring him back in, but reset the character a little bit so it's not the same. He essentially got 2+ seasons of being that character, which to me was more than enough. Same thing with Charlie Cox playing Daredevil. He got 3+ seasons with the Defenders. So I think that's part of the next story, is that we are getting some of the roles recast as well, which one would be the Punisher's wife, Vanessa. They're recasting the character. So that tells me, if anything, if they're recasting her, is it going to be flashbacks because she was dead, essentially, right?
Everybody comes and goes. Well, that is, and again, that kind of bleeds us into the next blurb that you have here. But yeah, the character of Vanessa, his long-suffering wife, is really the Kingpin's muse. It's kind of what drives his bus. Oh, everything's for Vanessa. Everything I've done is for Vanessa, and she leaves him, or she dies, and then she's in suspended animation, and they have a son, Richard, who becomes the schemer, and then he becomes the Rose, and blah blah. There's a whole thing. But yeah, going into the next bit, this actress Sandrine Holt has been cast as Vanessa, and it rattles off. She's a part of Better Call Saul, which I've never watched. Obviously, people swear up and down about it. And Hostages, which I'm not familiar with. She was, like everybody, in Southern California, at one point or another, in 24. That's how I know her. And she was in some other recent show that April and I watched. I can't remember, but great actress. I think she fits the bill of kind of a, darkly suffering looking kind of, put upon kind of vibe. So yeah, that's pretty much, the story of Vanessa Fisk. She's there to be his dark inspiration, because she, it's kind of very Godfather like, Kay, don't ask me about my business. He's the Godfather and she's Kay. Though she sticks around and dies and comes back and blah blah blah, like I said. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Who's to say?
So if they're recasting this character, this just tells me this is not going to be based on the Netflix series. It's just going to be, and we saw Kingpin as well. He was powered up. He was a little bit different, dressed a little bit more goofiness, like the way he was dressed was a little bit more comic appropriate. So I think when this all lays down, this is just going to be, we're reusing those characters, but this is our take on them with the actors you already know and love, which I think is perfectly fine, because it allows them to do different things, not replay the same storylines. Do we need Punisher and Daredevil or Kingpin going at each other again for like the 4th time?
Right.
If it's a different way to approach the situation, maybe they don't know each other,
Right. I mean, in the modern era with everything at your fingertips, and it's been this way since, the home video market was a thing in the last 40 years. You just don't need to, and that's what drives me nuts about, Disney's doing a live action version of this thing and that thing. You just don't need to grind over the same old thing when the same old thing is readily available to you, and probably now in a streaming service that you pay for. So if I love The Lion King, I don't need to suffer through the live action but also animated Lion King, because I can just go watch The Lion King. You know what I mean? So yes, give me a new story. Doesn't mean you can't take, particularly with Marvel comics that have been around for now over 60 years. You can do a whole lot of different stuff. You can redo the X-Men, which we're going to see in the next few years, and it's going to be something totally different. And it's even easier with the team. They can totally reboot the Avengers and do that differently. They can do the Fantastic Four, which we know is coming, and not just drag over the same story beats. Like, do you remember, with Fantastic Four in particular, do you remember how you didn't like how we did this before? You can now not like how we do this now. That's pretty
or the
much
X-Men.
where they go.
How many times can we do the Dark Phoenix story? Seriously.
Gotcha.
How many times?
Find a way. Oh my
And
gosh.
maybe this will be the good one. You know, 2
Right.
out of 3 ain't bad. No, 1 out of 3 might be
Yes.
good. Yeah.
Meatloaf, or
Horrible.
as I think we did an episode of Code 47 when Aaron was my co-host, that she had a friend named Matt, and he was Matt Loaf, and I called him Mart Loaf. So yes, 1 out of 3 ain't bad by Mart Loaf. There you go.
Exactly. Hey, you know what? It's well, you know, 1 out of 3 is bad. Quite honestly, it's 33%.
Yeah,
Nobody.
exactly.
Well, in baseball, I guess that's a good batting average, but you know,
1 out of
still
3,
pretty low.
sure.
Yeah, 1 out of
right.
3. Yeah. 300 bat. You know, batting 400 is impossible to get in baseball. So,
Right.
but movies, hope you're better at that because you're already bankrupt. You know.
Right. Exactly correct. So speaking of bankrupt and potentially creatively bankrupt, let's talk about Star Wars. Oh, I know, and I'm walking 2 edges of the sword because I do on this very network do a Star Wars program with our partner Mark, who is much more of a happy-go-lucky Star Wars guy.
He's a cheerleader for Star Wars. He is like everything has a positive side.
Which, I have Todd to balance me, but I still stay positive. I find bits and pieces in each of the Star Wars productions that I enjoy, unlike with Star Trek, where I'm just like, they can do no wrong, which is not true. They can do wrong. They have done wrong. But I'm a little bit more tipped up, but I'm also a little bit more critical because I feel like some of the programming we've gotten Star Wars related from Disney, particularly on Disney Plus, has been like, and here's Boba Fett and da-da-da-da-da-da. Thank you, no. But anyway, you got a headline here from Deadline. Disney is being very careful with Star Wars movie development. Your boy, Bob Disney, says Marvel brand not inherently off. And do you need a 3rd and 4th sequel for every character? So he's drilling down. He's drilling down. Yeah, it was. Yeah. I mean, Todd, we've talked about since Endgame on the big screen, Marvel has not really wowed me. You know what I mean? And it's been sequel. It's been, there have been some brand new things. We had the Eternals. Less said about that, the better. But everything else has been a sequel, and has one of them. Shang-Chi was, he was okay. But all the rest of them seemed like they were sequels, unless I'm forgetting something. And none of them have wowed to me personally.
Yeah,
am I forgetting something?
Well, and since that time, and you also get the MCU shows on Disney Plus, which meant that it was funny because they mentioned like in this amount of time you got this many movies, and then or Marvel things, and then in this period of time, like since you've gotten like 4x the amount of Marvel stuff. Right. So let's just put it this way: if you have that much more stuff, your hit and miss ratio is going to be a lot worse, because that means you're basically spreading your resources. You've got less people. Like, Kevin Feige's great, but you know what? Is he putting as much attention as he did when he was only doing a movie a year or a movie 2 or 3 years? When it was a smaller amount, you can add more care and attention to those things versus I've got 18 TV series. Everything has to be connected, TV and movies. That the Charlie Day, it's always, Sunny in Philadelphia.
The conspiracy board.
The Pepe Sylvia. Yeah, I have to track to see who's doing what's doing what. And well, if something gets delayed, then it's derailed. The concept just gets really hard to do. And because of that, now they're going to more niche characters. And before that niche character used to get a lot more love and care. It was the only thing happening around it. But now you got Miss Marvel dropping it, and it's going to be 6 episodes long. And some of these smaller characters might be better in cameos. They might be part of a team. They might be better just to show up and slowly introduce themselves. Or maybe they need their own series. But it's really hard to get lightning in a bottle like they did for the first 8 years of the MCU. Now we're so used to Marvel stuff that the freshness has worn off. The formula is much more clear because you see what they do. The end credit sequence is often just a trailer for the next TV series, which means to me it's like, okay, great, but I know that's coming because you already told me 3 years ago this is what your slate was. So there's no surprises anymore, really. Well, so spoilers become like almost not even a big deal anymore. So it's like the wonder of it is diminished. and we're getting so much of it, more of it now. You don't have to it's not must see Marvel anymore.
Right. Yeah, and you're dealing with obviously a much more informed fan base than you were 15 years ago when people were like, "Oh my God, this thing's happening! It's so amazing!" And now everybody has seen everything, and if everybody hasn't seen anything, they're digging around the internet to find it. So yeah, and this is on the heels of another headline within the last 30 days that they're really cutting back, particularly when it comes to Marvel, because they just know that they've done too much too soon, and they are they're kind of prostigators of their own potential demise. So yeah, slow it down. You guys are making some bucks, yeah. But Iger quoted here saying, disappointed by box office returns from Solo, which is now 5 years ago. Is it 5 years ago was the last time that we got that film, and it was 4 years ago that we got Rise of Skywalker, which in a lot of ways is, I won't say universally reviled.
Was Solo in between?
Yeah.
It was in between,
Solo,
right? Okay.
Yeah, it came out on the kind of Star Wars timeframe of Memorial Day weekend in 2018, because it was right when our son graduated from high school. So I remember we went to his graduation, and then we went and saw that movie. I know, priorities.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, and to your point, I did kind of just somebody was talking about, I think Akiro, who's been on your show many times, yours and Mark's show, and he is really pushing Disney to like, you guys got to fix some stuff, because right now you are losing the shine, and you're kind of wearing away all of that polish, and you're kind of getting too deep. You're kind of wearing away the love and fan love, and you're only keeping like the diehard around, and you're kind of losing the people that you need to come and see a movie. In the time that Marvel has owned Disney and Star Wars, so basically since 2015, is that when Star Wars was purchased, or when The Force Awakens came out? 2015 or 2016?
Came out in 2014. So the purchase was in 2012 or 2013. Yeah,
got it. So from that time, 2015, The Force Awakens, to at the same time when Marvel came out, Marvel has had, I believe, 16 films. Star Wars has had 6.
Right.
I mean, and essentially, if you say, well, they average about $1 billion, that's $10 billion they've left on the table because they can't get their shit figured out. Well, they can't get their stuff figured out. And Disney, if anything, Disney leads on a lot of money. They've got $49 and billions of dollars in debt. So they're kind of saying, like, Star Wars, you got to start making money for us, because if it's on Disney Plus, the heavy lifting in Disney Plus is already done. We've got people in. They're not really going to be gaining like the, you're not going to see the huge incremental. You're going to get more people joining, because they'll join, they'll drop off. So because of that, being on Disney Plus and having TV shows is just not enough anymore, because it doesn't create a lot of revenue. The TV series, unless they sell it off to someone else, which I don't think Disney's going to do. So, and the fact is, out of Star Wars, the fact that Star Wars is a film franchise first. Yeah. And now it's not anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and there's always been gaps with Star Wars anyways, but that was more because George Lucas got tired of Star Wars, and he just wanted to sit back and make action figures or do something else.
Count his millions. Or you know what? In fairness, he settled down and raised kids, which, hey, isn't that the dream for a lot of people? So that's great. But then it was like, I got to come back, and you haven't seen Jar Jar Binks, and Anakin is the snotty teenager or whatever. Got to have it.
Yeah. So it's not like Disney wants to take a break from this, but they know they've had to, because with what Solo did, and then every Star Wars movie after The Force Awakens saw declining returns. So something was not clicking. It wasn't must-see TV anymore. Star Wars should be an event. We know that. So, but they still got to put out a movie every once in a while. And the fact that all these projects that they've announced have just not turned into anything just tells me it's mismanagement at the very top, because they're not picking the right people. They're not getting the right scripts. And maybe they need to rethink what they said originally, Charlie, when they launched this thing. We've got a story group, and we've got this, and we've got that. I'm like, but you don't really have one person then making the decisions. You've got a collaborative, or a cabal.
There's not a Bill Star Wars that's calling the shots.
You don't have a Kevin Feige, because I don't think Kathleen Kennedy, quite honestly, she doesn't put it out there. She's in the weeds, and she knows Star Wars better than anybody else. And these are the characters she wants. I don't think she's an idea person. I think she's more of a get the pieces together and hire the right people. And I think after you've seen people, I don't think she's hired the right people for the most part. She's continued to go after projects which to me are diminishing returns. Like season 3 of the Bad Batch. Sorry, Bad Batch is speaking to a very small audience.
All right.
It's not speaking,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
So what I'm saying is this is what
Yeah.
they're trying to do. They're trying Bob Iger's like, Star Wars has to start stepping up and making
Right.
the money back, because
True.
if you compare
True.
what they paid for Marvel and Star Wars, Marvel
Listen,
is
big bucks.
who would have thought Marvel would ever be bigger than Star Wars, and it definitely is at this point. It's so crazy.
20 years ago, we would, when Marvel launches with, God, it was now 15 years ago, launching with Iron Man, basically a C- level character that it made Robert Downey Jr. one of the biggest movie stars in the world of this century. Yeah, it's nuts. But we shall see as things develop, and faithful listeners will bring it right to
Hashtag
you.
bring back the Book of Boba Fett universe.
Well, that is a long one. Be sure to make a note and save that on your phone when you want to do it on Twitter and Instagram. All right, moving on. Caped Crusader, that would be Batman, moves to Amazon with a 2-season order. This was the project from J.J. Abrams, Matt Reeves, and Bruce Timm. The latter two are comic writers. I know Bruce Timm is.
Bruce Timm was the guy behind the Batman the Animated Series.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Previously in development for HBO Max. So that's interesting, obviously, because that is it's Batman and it's a Warner Brothers property. But to see it like it was at HBO, is this something that was the victim of the Discovery Plus culling? But yeah, this sounds cool. Todd, you are more the Batman animated guy than me. So what are you thinking about this?
Well, there's always been a Batman animated series. It seems like every 3 or 4 years there's a new take. Batman the Brave and the Bold, the Batman. Right. Different, he's teamed up with Scooby-Doo. So animation is in Batman's blood. It always has been. The big one was Batman the Animated Series. Justice League Unlimited, where Batman was part of that team as well. So Bruce Timm being part of this he is the guy. If you want animated Batman, you go to Bruce Timm. You've got him there. J.J. Abrams had a deal to make projects for HBO Max. That really hasn't paid off, but he's obviously behind this as well to get this moving forward, which is good. And then you've got Matt Reeves, who's behind the Batman. So this is a good brain trust to bring a new animated series of Batman. It always does well. They're always very popular. You can get a new line of toys. But to your point, Charlie, HBO Max had kind of their culling where they have so much debt. They have to figure out something. So they've had to remove things that essentially are costing them money versus making them money. And one way they can make money is just take their licenses, like they used to actually before HBO Max, that's why you'd see like Gotham on Fox, you'd see Pennyworth on Epix or whatever. This is the same. This is going back to that old model. And it's, this model has worked just ridiculously well for Sony, where they essentially don't have to worry about having subscribers. They just make the content and sell it. This is the old model. TV shows did this all the time. You get like NBC Universal. Well, they've got a series that's on ABC. So that's why the rights don't always pay out, right? Like it's classic TV series like Who Owns Them? I don't know. Well, it was on NBC when I was a kid. Why isn't it on Peacock? Well, because it was actually produced by ABC. So long story short.
Yes.
Yeah. Long story short, we're getting this TV series. It's going to be on Amazon now. Basically, Warner Brothers is making money off of this, and Amazon gets content because Amazon doesn't make a lot of shows, so they're always looking to fill the gaps. So essentially, this is going to be a 10-episode first season run, and it's been secured for 2 seasons. So short seasons for animation, because animation is usually like 24 episodes.
Right, yeah. I mean, especially back in the day when animation, and if this is something, I don't know what the slant of this is. This is going to be more for your adult fans, could be more for the kids, probably more for the adult fans, I would imagine.
Well, it can hit both ways, and based on the one piece of art we see here, it kind of looks like a throwback from like the original Batman from like 1930s.
And I have that is one of my Batman over here in the corner. You probably can't make it out, but I've got my four Batman there, flanked by you can't see him. But anyway, yeah, I got this cool little Batman set a couple of years ago that was Batman Through the Ages, and yeah, that's Batman with the purple gloves. Loved him. Can't see it in this picture we have here, but this is great. I have another Amazon show I'm going to talk about in the Geek Easy, but Amazon, like you said, they don't have a ton of programming, but the accessibility is second to none because everybody's got Amazon. Everybody's got Amazon. Most people that I know have Amazon Prime because it's Amazon Prime. What the hell do you want? Jeff Bezos owns a little bit of our soul. You can't deny it as much as you say that you don't sometimes go to Walmart, even though we all hate it. We all do business on Amazon.
Yeah, it's weird. I rarely go to Walmart because it's just further out. It's more out of the way than other things are.
Right.
But to your point, if you know you need to go, you need to go. Don't be
Right. I went to an Amazon because it was in walking distance of the ship when we were in Puerto Vallarta because April needed eye drops.
You went to Amazon?
No, to Walmart.
Okay, I was going to say,
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a couple of Amazon grocery stores.
There was a shopping. Yeah, I saw one or two of them in LA, but I think that there was a big shopping mall next to it, so it could have been. So anyway, now we have Todd. You and I were talking in the pre-roll that Jenna Ortega was on SNL last night, and she's delightful. She's absolutely delightful. But she is circling being a part of a sequel to Beetlejuice. Holy cow. Beetlejuice being the 1989, was that a Tim Burton film?
88 Tim Burton film, yes.
Yeah, there you go. With music by Danny Elfman, of course, starring Michael Keaton and the delightful, I'm going to draw a blank on her name.
Winona Ryder?
Thank you very much. Because we just watched, don't you remember, a couple weeks back, April and I finally watched, the hell was that Gen X movie? Not Singles.
No, it was...
Reality Bites.
Yes.
That was, yes. Dad, the voice of our generation that I watched like a month ago when we're in our late 40s.
Always on the pulse of...
Yes, I know. Right on top of that film from 1993. But anyways, yeah, she's on fire right now. Did great things in Wednesday, which we loved. Everybody I know loved that. She's just in Scream 6, which we're going to talk about in the Geek Easy. And so yeah, I would imagine a reinvention of this. Perhaps she is, if they're moving the movie forward, and I would imagine they're bringing Michael Keaton back. Perhaps she is, she's the daughter of Winona Ryder's character, or related, or maybe it's going to be.
Yeah, she's supposed to be Lydia's daughter.
Yeah, there you go. I see that now. So, Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis and Jeffrey Jordan, who is Jeffrey Jones. Who the hell is Jeffrey Jordan?
Was he the big guy that was at the dance?
Oh,
remember the table, the bigger guy?
Could be. I think Jeffrey Jones, who was the father in that and was also the principal in Ferris Bueller's, I think he got himself in some trouble a couple of years back.
He did. Yeah, he is no longer making things. Yeah,
that's why his name, and of course Catherine O'Hara, who's still in things because of Schitt's Creek a few years back that everybody really loved. It sounds like the original film did well. $80 million on a $15 million budget. Not bad for the original film.
$1 million is probably like $300 million today.
Yeah, exactly. So on a teeny budget. So this is exciting. So I would imagine if she is, it says that she is eyeing this, but it doesn't say that she's committed. So I would imagine this is in kind of pre-production if they don't have those bits locked down. So be a couple years before we see this, but I'd be excited. I love Michael Keaton. I love the character. I love most things that he does, even going back to Multiplicity and what was the stay-at-home dad movie that he did?
Mr. Mom.
Mr. Mom. Yeah. Which I believe, because it was set in the Detroit area, was potentially they lived in Grosse Pointe, which is my hometown. So that's why I love it even more. Awesome. But anyway, I like him. And of course, the Vulture and the Spider-Man films, despite the fact they've diluted that character down to Morbius. Oh, yuck.
Well, I mean, Michael Keaton, I mean, he is a beloved actor. He kind of stepped out of the limelight for many, many years, came back, and I think he's just embracing his past, like a lot of actors do, when they kind of rejected it and coming back to it. He's, we've seen, he's the thing most people are excited about in the Flash movie. And he's done all these new roles where I think he's just wanting to make money and have a good time. And these type of projects are just fun. Probably getting back to work with people he enjoyed. Tim Burton. I think he enjoyed working with Tim Burton because he made Batman and he made Beetlejuice. I mean, he developed relationships. And Jenna Ortega, same thing. She worked with Tim Burton on Wednesday, and I think it was a good environment and it makes sense. It's a franchise that largely many people don't remember. I would say it's more cult than anything these days. So this is good. I enjoy it. Hopefully it's a good idea and done well versus, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Yeah.
Some of the long-awaited sequels, they are very hit and miss, mostly miss. We had Top Gun Maverick last year, which is now up for 6 Oscars tonight, which is crazy. But then for every, Top Gun Maverick, you're going to get an Independence Day resurgence, which just makes you want to bang your head against the rock. I remember I've told the story before. I went to go see that one with April and my mom. And at the end of it, my mom said, well, that was a movie. Because that's really how we felt about it. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, rounding things out, and Todd, you said you touched upon this while I was gone. But this news actually happened while we were on the Star Trek cruise on the ship. And two of the guests were Doug Jones, Captain Saru, and Sarah Middich, who is Lieutenant Nilsson, on the bridge of the Discovery. So we're talking about Star Trek Discovery. That show is going to come to an end after 5 seasons on CBS All Access / Paramount Plus. The show, and again, it happened while we were on the cruise. And Doug Jones is someone I know personally because he's a very close friend of Missy Merchant, who is my collaborator and one of our big Patreons. So he was a guest on the cruise. As I said, he was doing a panel later the same day, and he addressed it. And he said, "Yeah, I got a note." Rolled out of bed, jumped on a Zoom call, and that's how we got the news. And so we talked about this a little bit on Code 47, which you potentially listened to last week, where you had Peter and Kay and myself talking about it. But Todd, you and I talked about this a little bit on the pre-roll. So not to get all the way into the weeds, because if you want to hear deep Trek related thoughts about that, please definitely tune into our Code 47 episode. But 5 seasons in the streaming world is pretty damn good. It's pretty exceptional, really, because name to me another show that's been streaming since the real power of streamers. So we're talking the mid-teen.
Stranger Things is at 4, I think, right? They're on season 4. They're getting a 5th season, but yeah, there's not many.
But again, Stranger Things was really, really stretched out, because they did it. It was on, it was off for 2 years. It was on again. Discovery has been pretty consistent. And it also launched its own spinoff, which would be Star Trek Strange New Worlds, albeit with some established characters going in. But it's a lightning rod for fans, because there are your diehards who can't really accept that Star Trek is moving forward and telling different stories, and then there are people like Kay and Missy, who are part of our network, who absolutely embrace and love it. So one thing that can't be debated, and again, I won't belabor this too long, is that everything happening with Star Trek right now goes right back to Star Trek Discovery. It was the flagship of the CBS All Access. It brought Star Trek back to television after a 12-year hiatus after Star Trek Enterprise was canceled because the program and the format had gotten really stale. So it completely re-energized the concept of what Star Trek was to be like on television. Like it or lump it, if you're being honest with yourself, you cannot deny what they accomplished. And you know what? I'm not sad that it's ending, because all things have to have to an end, and as Kay said on our show, better to go out on top, telling strong stories, having this nice buffer. They had completed the season. This is what Doug shared, but there is on the horizon, they're going to come back, record some additional material so they can give it a proper ending, which is awesome. So yeah, I think it's, and move on to the next one. We've not had an announcement of a new program. We know Picard is ending. So I get the feeling Strange New Worlds within the next several weeks, we're going to find out that when Picard ends in May, we'll be getting Strange New Worlds. And then again, I think we had this discussion on the Discord. I think we're going to get Strange New Worlds, Lower Decks in the early summer, and then Prodigy in the later fall, because that's what we had last year. But again, and then Picard, and then we'll see this final season of Discovery in Picard's slot next February. So basically this time next year. But no word on a new program, which would still take a year or two to produce. So I would imagine that news might be coming too. Let's hope so.
Yeah, I mean, Strange New Worlds came in at a great time, right? Because then it's fresh, only one season so far. People can hop on board and get introduced to Trek. I always, like Chris, I said, if you're going to watch any show, start with Strange New Worlds. It's the best entry point Star Trek has ever had. It's not something that's 30 years old, which TNG and Deep Space Nine feel like they're like 20 to 30 years old now.
Almost 60 years old, which is TOS.
TOS.
I mean? So, yeah,
that's hard to get into. Enterprise is hard to get into. Voyager,
I have not spoken to anyone who has said that they didn't enjoy Strange New Worlds in the modern parlance. You know what I mean? It's just it's accessible, it's enjoyable, it's both serious and funny. It has some ongoing threads, but it's also very loosey goosey. So anyway, Strange New Worlds. But anyway, so bon voyage to the good folks at Discovery. Because it's been a wild ride. So anyway, that is the end of the news. Todd, it's time to get out that Fuber app, that Feeble Uber app. That's right. We got to get down to the Geek Easy. Our bad drinks and terrible service await, so that we can talk about stuff we've been enjoying this week. So let's go.
Talk nerdy to me. Talk nerdy to me.
We're setting the Geek Easy, drinks are poured, and we are ready to get our nerd on. So this is going to be kind of a mixed bag this week because Charlie's been gone. So we're going to cover a bunch of different things, and then we'll get into the Thunderdome topic, which kind of relates to two of the things we have both seen. So with that, Charlie, take it away.
You have to pick which two things it is. We'll take a micro poll. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so we're back in April. Like, oh my God, you go on vacation and you miss all this TV, which is like, why are we thinking like that? We were on vacation. It was amazing.
It's never going away. TV will be there for you.
I know, and it still wasn't. Actually, we still watched Mando and the end of 1923 and the first couple of episodes of the show I'm going to talk about when we were still on vacation. I watched the first couple episodes of this show that I'm going to talk about second in LA, which is awesome. But anyway, history of the world part 2. We talked about this on the show as we kind of found out about it, which was maybe 2 months ago. If you're familiar at all, we watched History of the World part 1 in April, never seen it, and we were both kind of like, I mean, the classic bits, it's like that's a favorite of my Uncle Chris, and he was always quoting, you look like the piss boy, you look like a bucket of shit, blah, 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 and it's good to be the king.
Don't get saucy with me, Bernays.
Yes, exactly. So, and it was kind of the, and again, when it comes to Mel Brooks, it'll always be Blazing Saddles for me, and then Spaceballs, and then everything else is kind of a glob. I'm not like, oh, I really love, like people are crazy about Young Frankenstein, and I'm kind of like, meh, it's okay. But History of the World, I wouldn't say I've seen it a ton of times, but it's an hour and a half. That film, which came out in 1981, is an hour and a half, and it's all about little funny vignettes on world events that just get kind of zanier and zanier. And at the end, Todd, you said you watched a couple of these, and there's 7 or 8 parts because it was aired like 2 or 3 parts a night over 4 nights. I'm not doing the math. 2 or 3 parts a night. I think it was 2 parts a night over 4 nights.
4 nights.
Making it eight segments. Okay, there we go. I got that math. Math bad. So Todd, you watched the first night, and it was funny because the original film ended with, and we'll bring you History of the World part 2, which he now did, 40 something years later. And one of the things they were plugging in there was Hitler on Ice. And so they plug in the original film. So they brought it back, and you saw exactly that. Then you saw it segued into our new actors. And again, you could get yourself a checkerboard of who was in this, and it would be easier to figure out who wasn't in it, because anyone you can name that is in the comedy world was pretty much in this.
Yeah.
Everybody. So yeah, you had, Ike Barinholtz and Wanda Sykes, and now a third person who I'm forgetting. Nick Kroll. Yeah, was in that scene, and they were the line judges for Hitler on Ice, and then it just goes from there. So you had, your caveman and the drawings, and you had your gal Natalie Morales was in an early sketch. There was 3 cave women getting stoned and talking about cave drawings and learning language. So it just gets crazier from there. You get a whole segment of Wanda Sykes as the first Black woman in Congress, but they turned it into a sitcom.
70s sitcom. That was pretty great. And you'll know it, Charlie. The husband in that is the guy from Story, which is funny because he's in a wheelchair, not in real life, which always seemed weird for me. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how you picked that, but whatever. Oops. Oh my gosh, that totally set off my watch. Sorry. I thought I had this.
Don't say that word, Charlie. It sounds your Siri picks up everything.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God. So anyway, it was a hoot, Todd. I would say, that's definite. It's definite, not must gotta watch the TV, but it was hilarious. And again, April's very hit and miss when it comes to comedy stuff. But she was enjoying this, so that was proof in the pudding that it's pretty funny for pretty much anybody, in my opinion.
Yeah, I love the fact that Mel Brooks is still involved in this, and they said, well, if they asked me to come back, I said no repeats, and you have to make me look like I did back in the day. And they got they doing the deep
put his
AI
face on a bodybuilder. Yeah,
it was great. Love that. And they do still do the when they do the segments, he still says exactly what the segment is. Right. And this one's definitely more R-rated than the original.
Big time, yeah, something that you wouldn't necessarily expect to see on a streamer, you know what I mean, or something like Hulu.
No, if you like, they're not worried about what they say or some of the subject material. Like the Kumail Nanjiani sketch was pretty damn funny.
About the Kama Sutra. Kama Sutra, yeah, exactly.
That was very funny. Yeah.
Pop quiz for you. Do you know how old Mel Brooks is? Did you look it up?
It's got to be like 92.
96.
Ooh.
96. And he doesn't look, like Kirk Douglas did, feeble, and you can't believe that he can still stand up. He looks like a normal dude. I mean,
Yeah.
unless that's all photographic fakery, but it was incredible to think that he is almost 100 years old. That's just absolutely insane.
Now I will say, Charlie, watching this, I feel like it feels like Drunk History, the reenactments. The way it looks by the way it's filmed, it doesn't look like a movie. Which the old one at least looked like a movie. This one definitely looks like it's filmed for TV and digital.
It's sketchy, it's very sketchy.
It's not as good looking, and they're making more material, so obviously it's not as like. I don't know if there's a lot of like standouts like, oh, this is going to stand the test of time like the original did.
True.
That was 90 minutes long. This is going to be like, 8 times 20. This is 3 hours long or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So each segment was about 25 minutes. So anyway, that is available to you on Hulu. Gets my highest recommendation. It was fun. And speaking of super high recommendations, I know we were touching about Amazon, super high, no pun intended, because this is set in the 70s. Amazon Prime, or Amazon, whatever the hell it is you want to call it, dropped Daisy and the Six. And it was funny. We were driving, we were taking our bus tour around LA after the cruise. And then I had rented a car. We were driving around LA before the cruise. And in Los Angeles, they have billboards, and they have bus stop backings for entertainment things, which we don't have them in the Midwest, or so much, because we don't have buses. This is Michigan. We don't have public transportation. But this was something that I was seeing advertised, and it's about a rock band in the 1970s, which is basically a dead ringer for the story of Fleetwood Mac. Because you have the ingenue lead singer, you've got the angsty guitar player, and I'm totally obsessed with it. And because it's Amazon, because I have Amazon Prime for my music, there's a whole album available, and they also pump out for each episode, they pump out a new little 3 or 4 songs that were featured in the episode. So totally obsessed with it. Been listening to it, memorizing the songs for like the last week. It's a blast. It's a blast. I highly recommend it. Todd, you had mentioned just by seeing it, you're like, oh, it's pretty much like Almost Famous, which is a Cameron Crowe film from the early 2000s, which I adore. Todd, highest recommendation. Go watch this bad boy. They're releasing it in the weirdest schedule. So we watched the first 3 in the hotel in LA, because I always travel with my travel Roku, so I had it plugged in. Then they released 3 this past Friday, and then it's 2 and 2, and then it's over on March 24th. That's very weird.
It's very weird. Yeah.
I don't know if they're like, we got to get this out because we don't want to wait and we want to strike while the iron's hot. But I can't recall a show because you either go episodic, 1 a week, or sometimes 2 a week, or you dump everything like Amazon does or like Netflix does. So it was very weird to me, the release schedule, but shit, I'm here for it. I just like I said, I'm totally obsessed with it. So gimme.
Yeah, it's not like Amazon, like I said, has a lot of materials. So like, what are they waiting to like bring out next? I mean,
don't know.
Like milk it, and have people come back to keep talking about the show, because once it's out, and people will move on to the next thing.
I mean, it's a one and done too, because you can tell it's the entire story is framed by this is what happened 25 years later, and so it's set in the early 2000s. Like,
they'll have to have the
interview segments.
Will they age them up a year later, and they have the renewal tour?
What happened? Yeah. What's that?
Will they actually bring them back later? Have their reunion tour or something like that?
I have a feeling it'll end that way, so who knows? But it's great, and the Riley Keough is Daisy Jones, who is Elvis's granddaughter in real life.
Oh,
yeah,
very good.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with any of the other actors. I don't know if they're actually musicians, but she does all her own singing, and of course she's magnificent because she's Elvis's granddaughter.
Crazy.
Good stuff. Yeah, highest recommendation. So, all right. Well, the next couple of things, actually, everything you want to talk about here, we've all consumed together, and it's going to bleed us into the Thunderdome. So, kick us off. Oh, I love how you mistyped Creed 3 with three threes. I like it. I get it.
Well, we'll do this quick. We'll just talk really quick. I'm assuming you saw Mandalorian episode 2, Charlie.
Yes. Yeah. Watched it. 2 and 3. But you've not seen 3. Or no, it was only 2. I'm sorry.
2. There's only 2. Yeah. No, I've not seen 3 yet.
Yes. Oh, I've got the power.
Yes. So, I watched the first episode. I thought it was okay.
Okay.
And I think that's going to be the problem with me as Mandalorian goes. I'm going to feel like, it feels like more of the same. Feels like more of the same. I'm used to it. It's not fresh and new. Kind of like, because the driving force of this with Mandalore and things like that, to me, is not that interesting. And I think a lot of people will say it's not that interesting to them because they weren't big into Clone Wars or Rebels. People that were into those totally get it. You're going to be very excited about this.
And there are plenty, and those are the people who are watching the Bad Batch and stuff.
They're the smallest part of the audience, right? Because most people, the numbers that are biggest, have only watched Mandalorian. They're not going to watch Clone Wars and things like that. So with this, though, the main plot point is resurrect man, get him in the waters. He's now in the water, so he's been cleansed. And then we've got.
And that worked out so great for him because it was like step, whoa,
and he's gone. Yeah, so it was kind of neat. We got some. I thought what I liked about it, they basically brought in a General Grievous type character I call Iborg because he's got one eye,
and he was Borgy.
Really creepy character. I'm like, that's kind of a cool idea. Something we haven't seen before. It's like, what is it? Why was it there? We don't know. We've got some weird, the creature. What was that?
The Morlocks.
The time machine. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
That's what I said right away because they look exactly the same.
Exactly. So, with all of this, there's a couple of decisions. I'm like, I think they need to make some progress on this. First of all, that ship was a bad decision.
Oh my God, it's the worst. It drives me nuts.
I mean, they're going to need a trailer or get the RV from Spaceballs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, talk about a serious ass downgrade. I love, and it's one of the little ships I have back there on my shelf.
The Razor Crest.
The Razor Crest was the bomb. Love that. So why can't he just go find himself another one? There has to be another one out there. I mean, they said it was an old ship and blah blah blah, but there's 50 gazillion Millennium Falcons out there. So go get another one. Go get
like I said, get the Spaceballs RV. Like a lot of people that travel in RVs, what do? They have a trailer for a car. Same thing there. Do that. We're good to go. Because where were they going to put IG-88? Right?
In the cargo section. Well, more to the point.
It was going to be his head and his legs just dangling below.
More to the point, how does he take a whiz? Or what if he's got a number 2? What does he do? Are there rest areas in space? I don't think so.
Where the pod doesn't fit in there with him. I mean, there's no room. Yeah,
there's got to be. And it's funny. I was watching, one of the regular YouTubers I watch, New Rock Stars, Eric Voss, and he was saying, you don't see Grogu flips into the ship when he's getting ready to take off in a hurry. Because that bat is chasing him, and then the pram is just somehow in the ship. So it's like, did he have a remote and push a button and went?
He's got them everywhere. Yeah, he just leaves them everywhere he's going to go. Just you bring your baby,
those bicycles you see in cities everywhere that you just plonk down some money.
They're just everywhere. Around. Yeah. So that's my first complaint. My second complaint is, Grogu's got to get freaking older. You can't do this toddler thing for the next 10 years. It just gets old.
I saw your note, and as far, they can and they could. When we first see the first appearance of Yoda that I'm aware of in the High Republic comics, he's like 600, and he looks like he's in his 20s, maybe 20s or 30s. So between 50 and 600, they can keep. But the thing is, babe, it's a cash cow. They're not going to let go of him.
It's old. Baby Groot was only Baby Groot for one freaking movie. It wasn't Baby Groot for 18 more movies.
What part of me agrees with you. Part of me says I wouldn't get your heart broke over this because they're going to milk Grogu as long. We're back to milking again. They're going to do it as long as they possibly can because people are crazy for it.
Well, I laugh because I'm like, well, he's supposed to be super intelligent, but he acts like a freaking toddler. He still wants to crush Babu Frack or whatever his name is.
Babu Frick, but I like Babu Frack. Let's go with that.
Exactly, yeah. He's like George. He's like George from, or Lenny. Was it Lenny? No, George. From,
from Mice and Men.
Mice and Men. So, once again, they said Yoda was a Jedi at 100. And Grogu's 50.
I don't know your sources on that, but I don't recall. I don't recall ever hearing that information. So I don't know.
Star Wars will make it up and make it work anyways. But once again, if he's at that age of pace, everybody will be dead by the time he can speak.
Probably so. But again, like I said, from a marketing standpoint, I know you can appreciate this because you're in the marketing business like I am. They're going to keep milking that shit until the wheels fall off. So anyway, let's move on. So you and I saw a pair of movies. April and I did a doubleheader at the movies yesterday, and we saw both of these. So it's very fresh for me. We're talking about Creed 3D, Creed 3, and Six Creams. Scream
Yes.
6.
Yes,
Very
it's
nice.
new elite speak for movies. They have numbers in them to make them work.
Yes,
Don't
very
know how
good.
4 will work with Creed, and I don't know how Scream 7 will work. I don't know. You got to figure it out. Maybe part of the A, maybe it's leaning, or I don't know. Pick a number and make it into a letter, or whatever. We'll go from that. So yeah, just a background to my journey on the Creed series. I said I pledged I would catch up to watch this movie. I did. In the last 3 weeks, I watched all the Creed films. I also did a recap of all the Rocky films. The podcast I listen to does a really good job of watching the Rockies. They go in for like 40 minutes on every film, and they touch on every detail, which is great because you get to hear about. But so I really enjoyed the Creed films, and it's been kind of it's nostalgia peeking pieces from Rocky, and then through the new lens of the new character of Adonis Creed, which is the bastard child of Apollo, and about his relationship basically being rescued from bad trouble by Felicia Rashad, who is the wife of Apollo Creed, which. Fun fact: she did not play Apollo's wife.
She did not.
In the movie.
No, because at that time she was in real life. She was on the Cosby Show, and I'm pinioned both by Creed 3 and Scream 6 in that what we should have done was shotgun at least the previous film, because April and I were sitting in Scream like, I don't remember anything about the last movie at all. No, I mean, and they catch you up. They're like, well, and Jack Quaid was in it. I'm like, oh, I love Jack Quaid. Oh, now I remember he was the killer and blah, blah, blah. And his girlfriend, this thing and that thing. So, yeah, so I get it now. But
what's her name? Mia Goth or something? No,
was she in that as well? Because she was in that movie.
Maybe she wasn't.
She was in that movie X that I talked about, and that was exactly that. But with Creed 3, I was drawing a blank on some of the details. I knew that Tessa Thompson was his girlfriend / wife, but this did a time jump from 2015 to now, where he had retired and he had a child. I don't know. I couldn't remember if did he have a child in the second one?
Second movie. They got married. They had the baby. They found out the baby was hard of hearing or deaf, and they did that. Yeah, the baby was essentially like a 1-year-old in that movie.
Well, I was going to say. And like I said to you, I said it was kind of trope city, this movie, because again, what you just described in Creed 2, that was Rocky 2, because he and Adrian settled down. The baby was born prematurely, blah, blah, blah. And then Rocky was like, I got to make my comeback. And he goes, and then he defeats him. And then essentially this was also like Rocky 5, where there was a young upstart from the streets. There wasn't the family connection there, but Rocky had mentored this kid who then wanted to take him down. And, Rocky had to come back and fight for it. And then we had elements of Rocky 4 where he was flipping the tire and he was punching a tree and he was pulling an airplane with chains, which I thought was awesome. It just, the whole kind of like with Cocaine Bear, which was the other movie I forgot to mention that we saw earlier in the week. Just by the time we got to the third act, I was like, I just felt like they were kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall. Where certainly the first 2/3 of Creed 3, there was a lot of emotional connection. I actually really enjoyed the ending. Obviously, the predictability was that, yes, he was going to win, even though he came out of retirement. He was going to beat his nemesis, which was Kang the Conqueror. But at the end of it, you know what? They made up, which I thought was awesome. I thought that was nice. You don't necessarily expect that. Didn't necessarily happen in the Rocky movies, though Apollo and Rocky became pals, but it took 3 movies for that to happen, and for Mr. T to come along and he elbowed Mickey and Mickey fell down and died, and then he was like, we're gonna get him. So that was Rocky 3. But yeah, it was just it did feel kind of troporama by the end. We got to Creed.
That's every Rocky film since number 2, essentially.
But again, that's also very true, and I do enjoy the Rocky films. The first one was dynamite. The second one I thought sucked. The third one was Mr. T. So what can you say? The fourth one is a classic of the 80s.
It's more montage than movie. Yeah. It's like 30 minutes of montages.
And then the fifth one is a nice caveat to it. And then they did the sequel You Never Knew You Needed with Rocky Balboa, which was nice and bittersweet and told, Rocky's life.
Legitimized Rocky, essentially. Made it like actually like it's not a gimmick movie anymore. It's not like, oh, we've got to come up with the next big trope or something like that.
Right.
I did really like Creed 3 because it was a different take on it, like a friend from the very beginning versus like where imagine that, like fighting one of your childhood friends.
Todd, you and me, let's go.
Yeah. Perfect. And it was dealing with trauma, and that's something the Rocky films never dealt with trauma. It was just like, I can punch my way out of my problems.
He just kept going.
Yeah.
Well, the fifth one was not bad with that kind of emotional introspective, the fifth Rocky movie. And I know you said, I don't think I saw that one because it was Rocky, because of Paulie, of course, they lost all their fortune and they ended up back in the old neighborhood. And then they ended up taking in this kid and training him and blah, blah, blah. And then eventually he turns on Rocky, and then that's the end of the film. And that was, and it dealt with Rocky's relationship with his son, who was his real life son, who unfortunately died at a very young age. That film, from an emotional standpoint, that one, and Rocky Balboa, which is the sixth one, where his son becomes is it Vito Vermiglia, the guy who was in not the last
Milo,
the story
this
of us, not the last
Heroes,
of us. Yeah, exactly. Yep. So I would say of the Rockies, go 1 and then jump to 5 and 6. And I found this to be the weakest of the Creed films because I love the first one, probably because of the connection with Rocky. The second one, he was really dealing, he fought the son of Drago, who you saw in this film. They became friends. But it was, and again, I'm spitballing off of movies I've not seen in a long time, but that one really saw him dealing with his past and his legacy that he didn't really know was his because he was an illegitimate son of Apollo Creed. And like I said, for 2/3 of Rocky 3, I feel like they had me. And in the last act, it was kind of like trope city. It was more trope than movie in the third act.
I think it did something that many of the Rockies haven't done. So I think it was a different resolution than you had because, it was a different take, and it was a different. I think they did some different filming because Michael G. Jordan actually filmed this. I thought they did some great things to make the fight different, which was like putting them almost in a daydream sequence where it's like the way was like a cage. So it was, and Michael B. Jordan's inspired by anime and different things like that, where Ryan Coogler did the first 2 films, I believe, but he didn't do this one. And
that was a great connection between this, and it was funny, one of the songs drops a Wakanda reference, and of course he was Killmonger, and then you have obviously Jonathan Majors, who is Kang. So this was more Marvel-y, particularly in that regard. So
And I think the other part that is that was interesting with this too was, you had Michael B. Jordan trying to step away and being successful and doing all these things, where Rocky he could never continue success. He consistently fumbled his way to ruin. And then this movie had no Rocky in it either. And that is a big part of that is the fact that Rocky Sylvester Stallone doesn't own the rights to Rocky. That's Irwin Winkler or whatever, the producer guy. And they are fighting each other. And that's why Rocky's not in this. And they're apparently going to make a Creed verse. It's very funky. But I like this. I like this movie a lot. I like this series. It's really cool. I would say the Creed movies overall have better quality control than the Rocky films.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, Rocky was so wild, wild west because the whole thing was, it was Stallone's project in the beginning. He was broke when he made it. He negotiated that he wanted to write and star in it because the studio didn't want him, and it was the thing that launched his career. That would be something, listeners, I would say dig into the history. Go to Wikipedia and read Sylvester Stallone's page in the Rocky section. It's pretty astonishing. But anyway, let's move on and talk about Six Cream. Sounds like a donut.
We all scream for Six Cream. Yes. So Scream is essentially been around from the beginning of time. I believe when I was in college, the first movie launched.
The late 90s, 1996. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. When I was in college, I'd take out the movie poster or movie page from a magazine of Scream, put it on my wall and said, I am so excited for this because we were in this mode where Wes Craven came back to film to do a new franchise. Also, Kevin Williamson, who is behind Dawson's Creek and all of those shows, was doing the writing.
That was one thing I remarked to April as the credits were rolling. I'm like, Kevin Williamson, he didn't, unlike Josh Whedon, he didn't get Me Too'd. Like, he's still a good guy, right? Like, he's still working and doing stuff.
Absolutely. Yep. He does a lot of different projects. Yeah. But he was writing teenagers in a very specific way. And just created this cool riff on serial killers. And so we've had all these different films. They've had, the original crew. Then we had some new people brought in Scream 5 specifically, which was the last one, which and the cool thing about Scream as a franchise is it takes the pieces from prior films and builds on it. But it's not a film series that's looking forward. It's always looking back and bringing those things in. So your point, Charlie, like, I don't remember what happened here, but somebody from the past is always going to be part of the problem. Right. It was filmed.
Right. And we were really struggling because Scream 4 starred Hayden Panettiere from Heroes, and they filmed it right here in Michigan. I really don't remember a damn thing about it. I think Mary McDonnell, Laura Roslin for BSG was one of the stars of that film. Absolutely don't remember anything else about it other than they filmed it in Pontiac, Michigan. Those are my 3 bits, but she's like, I was, blah, and now I'm grown and I'm with the FBI and it stabbed me or whatever. And then Dermot Mulrooney was was a cop in this. And I didn't figure out the twist until the end. I don't know about you. Maybe I'm just dumb.
I thought it was going to be the boy that was brought in as the roommate. I thought he was going to be the guy, or, and typically it's a love. It's typically it's a love interest, it's killer, and they talk about that, which is great. Yeah. We've got this. They always talk about the rules and where they're at. With the rules, Jamie Kennedy set the stage. His essentially his niece and nephew have now taken over that role. The female geek has talked about the rules and how it's changed again in this movie. And they talk about the requel and how no one is safe. And they talk about the motivation who could kill them. So I'm glad that he went back to that just to say where we're at now with horror, because horror seems to be one of those genres where everything old is new again. They bring back things, they can reinvent them, and it's really, really effective. Now in this movie, Charlie, they decided to go to the big city, which we really haven't had before. And that's kind of scary.
True. And it was, a lot of red herrings in the beginning. You saw delightful Samara Weaving was the first victim. Spoilers, by the way. Whoops, we always forget that. But then you saw the kid who plays Flash Thompson in the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies was the killer. He gets whacked, and then you're just kind of going through it all. And it ends up in that this whole thing is orchestrated by the family of Jack Quaid's character from the previous film, who has a big museum of, all of the props. So going all the way back to the fact that the sisters who are at the core of this film are the illegitimate children of Skeet Ulrich's original Scream serial killer guy. Again, a lot of fun tropes. And April and I, maybe it's because April and I do a bad movies podcast now, that even if we're in a theater and there's not many people around, we'll just be riffing to each other. So we had some.
Charlie, you do that in every film, regardless of how many people there. It's always you're like Robert De Niro smoking the cigar in Cape Fear.
I'm kicking the back of somebody's seat. We were having a good. So this was delightful, but it wasn't serious. Where Creed was obviously a little bit more serious. So
yeah.
But no, it was a good time. And what do you think? I mean, they always kind of leave the door. I mean, the door is always open. This will not be the end of the film. And again, they could do a soft reboot of this as well. You had the near death of Courtney Cox's character of Gale Weathers, which I love the throwaway line at the end. Hey, I called the hospital and these 2 characters are fine. And Gale was one of them.
Yeah.
Well, that was great.
And Sydney was not in this because Neve Campbell apparently was not going to get paid what she wanted. So that's why.
She'll be back. That'll be the 7th one.
Yeah. This movie did very well. Yeah. But I would say I had a couple observations on this really quickly. The most ridiculous thing in this film is always the fact that the Scream Ghostface gets the crap beat out of them.
Right.
Frying pan to the face. They're up in 2 seconds.
Right. And when you see them unmasked, which you do in this, not a single mark on any of them.
Unless they have a lot of makeup on or something, but there's no bruises. I mean, they would be like.
Yeah, someone who takes a frying pan to the face, or they fell and landed on a table, or at least Dermot Mulrooney's character in the end, when he falls from the balcony and lands on that table, he's all scarred up and stuff. But yikes! My goodness!
Or they're ridiculously strong, which I'm like, you're just beating the crap out of people.
And one of them is a 120-pound young female. I don't really think that she could pick somebody up and choke them.
Or the boy looked at skinny Sam. I mean, he looked skinny too. And the other part was stabbing people apparently is like no big deal. Like the geek friend,
got
she
got
got
stabbed on the
stabbed
subway.
so badly, and she's just walking around at the end with just a bandage. I'm like, what?
Right. And then her girlfriend earlier on got stabbed and twisted the knife so her guts were there, but she was still, I don't even know how she was still leaking. She's like, I'm still going to try to make it. And then she falls out of a window because the ghost face jostles the ladder. So anyway.
Well, last thing, end credits.
Yeah.
So there is an end credits for this film.
Yeah.
And once again, we already said spoilers. So if you're here, fast forward if you want to listen to it. We'll get to the next segment. I get to the end credits. It's at the very end, and you get the geek girl saying, and the last observation is not every movie needs an end credit sequence. Boom, done.
It's Todd. You talk about it literally almost every episode. It's Todd's now very cold take that he hates.
No, I think it's everybody's take now that they are potentially worthless these days because they're in everything and everybody gets one. They're like,
yeah, you're right. Well, that flies in the face of my assertion of the old times, and everybody stinks. And if everybody stinks, nobody stinks.
Yeah.
So if everybody
Ferris Bueller.
Yeah, if every movie's got a stinger, no movie's got a stinger.
Yeah, Ferris Bueller said, "Go home, go away." He predicted this how many years ago? Go away, stop watching the movie.
40-something years ago. All right. Well, with that, it's time to leave the geek easy. We're not paying a tip. We might not even pay the bill. But what I will do, I'll get out my r3quels app. It's time to get down to the land down under. The mutants await for a quick run through about sequels and requels. Let's go.
Welcome to another edition of Thunderdome!
Thank you, Tina. We're sitting in the Thunderdome where the mutants have been gathered for a topic or a game to be entertained. And this week, based on the two movies we just talked about, I thought it was time to talk about the state of the requel. For everyone who doesn't know what a requel is, essentially, it's not a sequel because you're essentially resetting the stage with a new core set of characters in a franchise. It's going to have callbacks, and some of those people from the original may be back in, but you're essentially modernizing a franchise based on what's going on and giving it new blood rather than doing the same thing for the seventh time. And Charlie, I even mentioned this. They're doing with TV shows now.
Big time.
Yeah, I mean, Star Trek was probably the first one that did it with The Next Generation. It essentially says we're going to take the foundation of Star Trek and we're going to move it forward with a new set of core characters, but have callbacks to the past.
Right. And it's interesting, even on the cruise, Denise Crosby, who was only in that first season of TNG as Tasha Yar, was talking. Some of the absolute worst episodes of TNG were in that first 10 to 15 episode block and of that first season. And she said, well, we had all the same writers as TOS, and that was all they really knew how to do was that kind of stuff, which is why you got, the planet, the Africa planet, which was like episode 2 or 3, or the planet of all the naked people where Wesley steps on the flowers and then they want to kill him. It was just, hopefully you've never seen those episodes, Todd, and I hope you never do.
Oh, I did. Yeah.
We've talked about that Africa Planet episode on Code 47 more than once, but yikes, big time. Extending the metaphor, with TOS, we had a whole new core group of characters, but it was set in the Star Trek universe, and it led to one of the first big franchises of spinoffs that you saw was really ongoing. But even in the modern day, in the sitcom world, we're getting more of that. The new Night Court is an example. I know you and John aren't nuts about the new Night Court. It's not groundbreaking, but there's still a chuckle here and there.
Sure.
But with that, it's the same setting, literally, practically the same sets, just brighter and painted. You have a returning character, and then you have a child of one of the original characters from the show. And that's about it. They haven't done bringing in any legacy characters, but there's still a good chance that could happen if the show is a success. I don't know if that show is a success. It's a network.
Oh, it has. Program. It's been re-signed for the next season.
Oh, so. Okay. Well, then you can count on seeing. And again, you had in that show, you have two of the leads who have passed away. You have one of the leads who is a main character on the show currently. It would be Dan Fielding, John Larroquette's character, and I believe that Marsha Warfield and Richard Mole are still alive. I think.
Yes.
Potentially. So I would bet dollars to donuts that you'll end up seeing them. I think that shows success. I think it's fun. One that was not for me was the new Quantum Leap. Todd, I don't know if you've watched any more of it.
I gave up very early on this show.
Same.
I just felt like it doesn't feel like a good show. That was the first problem. Like,
and I really didn't expect to. I expected to love it because not only do I love Quantum Leap so much that I mean, Missy and I are going to be doing an episode of our Patreon, the Patreon segment, The Facts of Geek Life, right after we wrap up here, where we're talking about the first several episodes of Quantum Leap, which is a show that you and I have talked about. It's very evergreen. People still love it because it really holds up. But the new series was a similar setting, but they were splitting their time between portraying modern day and storylines that are happening in the modern day and a big mystery. And you have a new leaper, but you have some heritage actors you have a heritage character portrayed by a new actor that was in the role of Ernie Hudson. You had a return of Susan Dial, who played the wife of Al Calavici, who is the late, I'm going to draw a blank on his name, Dean Stockwell, who was one of the two main characters in the original series, and the promise that you would never see Scott Bakula. Oh, I'm not coming back. I'm not involved. But if that show is successful, again, I just get the feeling that he's going to show up. And I don't know if that show is successful, but for me, no interest. I felt like they really didn't click it. I mean, the very first episode, he was in the mid 1980s and he leapt into a guy sitting in a parked van, and he got out of the van and looked around, and it was very obviously the New York City set on the Universal backlot. And he looked around, and he was in Philadelphia, saw a poster for Live Aid, saw two people in very 80s clothes walking past with a Walkman trading cassette tapes. He looked at a movie poster and Goonies was playing or something. It was just like it was their time travel is just way too on the nose. And they changed some of the core concepts. He's not just leaping in his lifetime, he's leaping whenever. So it didn't stick to the things that I thought really made the show click, So anyway, there we go. That's my ramble.
Yeah, I mean, and I watched it. I'm like, this just doesn't feel like a good show. So,
yeah.
Good writing is key to anything succeeding. This seems like more like an NBC show, like Chicago Hope, but we've got it in like, Quantum Leap. It's just right. Too formulaic. It just doesn't. A lot of things don't make sense. It's 60 minutes of like problem of the week, and it just feels like an old throwback rather than moving it forward and being smarter. So we do have some of these that, I mean, we're getting more and more of these, like How I Met Your Father, which is funny because it's not like that original show was that old to begin with. And I don't know if there's going to be a shorter window when these things happen, when you get a new core cast of characters. And it's different than a spin-off, because that's another thing people would say, well, it sounds like a spin-off. Like, no, spin-offs are typically in line with the regular show. It's like happening at the same time. It's not like
Deep Space Nine, Voyager.
It's because you're not going to call Frasier a requel. It is a spin-off, taking that character, doing something different. Other people may show up, but it's in that same timeline. It's not like a leap forward or something like that. With the requels, it's kind of a hard one. What is a requel? What is just a sequel? It's harder to say. And I would say like the Halloween films we got in 2018 is a requel because essentially ignored the prior sequels.
Yeah, it completely wiped out all continuity post 1978, which was the first film. They simply said, and they paid it a little homage. They were like, there were stories for years that Michael Myers was Laurie Strode's brother, and he did this thing and he did that thing, but they were all stories that didn't really happen. Yeah.
And it's not a reboot either, because you're not starting from scratch. So you're taking those things, moving it forward with typically, like I said, new characters and Laurie Strode's kids. So at least you can have something to start and kind of have a new view through those eyes, and can go from that perspective. So that would be one of them. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones we've had. Scream obviously is a big one. It's been successful. It's done the right thing, which is it takes the hallmarks, reincorporates them, and then builds on the legacy, which is great. But it always brings in new opportunities to play with what's new in our time that we can have. Social media, cell phones, all these other things that didn't exist at the time, which complicate storytelling at times, but also can give you some options to, get creative with the approach you want to have. Requels, we also had Matrix Revolution, which was the most Resurrections. That movie was bad. It was just a bad film. Like I said, it goes back to good writing. And
right, exactly. Yeah, and again, I was never the biggest fan of The Matrix in general, but that film really broke serious ground. It was right at the time when CGI was becoming a great part of storytelling, and they really did a lot of pretty essential world building in that film. But yeah, they're bringing it back around and just saying, well, here's the thing you like and blah blah blah, and it was a bad script. Not differently acted than any of the other films. It's just not a great story that was able to, that the actors could rise above, because we know you can put some of the best actors in absolutely anything and it could turn into the Star Wars prequels. You know what I mean? If there's bad direction and a bad story. So,
well, and then Top Gun Maverick, same thing there. That's a requel because it is introducing a lot of new characters. It's moving the story forward, but it's essentially putting the stage to say, what do you do when Maverick can't retell a story for the 18th time?
Right, and it was and that was an even more interesting spin, because even though the story was called Top Gun and it took place within that setting, it wasn't a retelling of the first film where it was Top Gun school. It was I've assembled a crack team of the best pilots in the Navy to take on this crazy mission against an adversary that we can't name because we want to be able to market the film in China. And he was basically going to school them in being a maverick. So really, there you go. There's the title of the film. So it really subverted your expectations of what you would walk back and look at something which I think is one of the worst requels that we've seen, certainly in the last decade, which I mention all the time, is Independence Day Resurgence. You took no elements that made the first film fun or exciting, and you just told a very bland story of, now the aliens are back, but they're bigger and badder and uglier, and here's some other stuff you didn't know, that there's alien tech all over the world and blah blah blah, and here's Jeff Goldblum's character, and now he has an ex-girlfriend, and we recast the president's daughter, and the president's daughter is all feeble, and they try to bring him back to make another rousing speech, and it really sucks. It's just, everything about that movie was god awful. And then at the very end of it, they do what the guys on the Weekly Planet call "start your engines," which is, I'm going to throw a line in there that's going to set up the sequel. And they were like, let's go kick some alien ass. We're going to go fight him in Berber. But the movie was a bomb, and you'll never see it again. Hopefully, you know what I mean? So yeah, I love when something ends with a very much a start your engines kind of moment, which I think they tried to do with the Universal Monster series, where they did the new Mummy and they were trying to manufacture a cinematic universe out of it. That kind of makes me chuckle. And it's always the thing that I consider the most telling, which is people speaking with their wallets and saying, yeah, this is crap, we're not going to go see it. Or the early buzz is so flat that it's just DOA.
Yeah. And quite honestly, the Fast and Furious films did this. They did a requel because they did the Tokyo Drift. That didn't do anything, but it kind of said, let's reset the stage, and you see where that went. Basically bring back the main characters, but also then bring in all these people to reintegrate the series. And now it's forever. Exactly. But another one that I wanted to bring in was the Jurassic World movies.
Oh yeah, because they did a serious pivot on that, because you had three films, in from 93 to 01, which was, we've got an island with dinosaurs and we think this could work out, and it didn't work out. But then the second two films were a spinoff from, well, it didn't work out, but the dinosaurs are still out there and we need them for some reason, or poachers want them, or my kid got lost on the island and we need Alan Grant to go rescue him. And then it was over. And then, 15 years go by and we find out that in the world of Jurassic Park, they got shit figured out and they built an amusement park around it, and it's on the same island. But then, much like with all the first films, everything goes wrong and people are dying. And then the other two films were subsequently about the fallout, because at the end of the second film, dinosaurs are on the mainland and now they're a part of life everywhere because they've traveled everywhere. And, that third film came out last summer. What was it? It was the Jurassic World. Was it Dominion? I'm going to say.
Sure. I've not seen any of them. Yeah, it was Dominion.
They stuck together the legacy characters with the new characters, and nobody gave a shit. It just did not. For me, it just did not click.
Apparently that movie was all about like big insects at the end or something like that, right?
Yeah, it was a big corporation trying to manufacture a food shortage crisis to make money. So it was the evil villain. Because you didn't see it. It was part of our movie challenge, but I know you didn't see it. And yeah, bro, not at all. Just
No.
you missed not.
No,
you missed
don't need
nothing.
to see it. Don't need to see
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
And I think it absolutely underwhelmed at the box office for the exact same reason. So
Yeah. And I'll give you a couple more examples. I mean, you could say the Star Wars The Force Awakens is a requel. New cast of characters brought forward. And that's been a hallmark of Star Wars, right? It's just like take the past, bring in new characters, always touch back to the past. So we've had that. The Ghostbusters most recent Afterlife, that is a requel.
And they nailed it where they tried to reboot it in 2016 and people were pissing themselves over it. Because, oh my God, they're women. Ooh, how incredible. You know, it just wasn't well written, and it was also basically a reboot. So basically, it's saying ignore those other things. We don't care about those, but we'll bring back the heritage characters and weird cameos where they're not playing themselves. It's exactly. Yeah, it was a big flopperoo. So anyway, so what do you think? To wrap this up, what do you think? Is this going to be something we're going to continue to see moving forward? I would imagine just because.
Well, Picard, Charlie, you're loving Picard finally, and that's a requel right there too.
And that took some time because, again, in particular, that second season of it, and yes, there are people out there who enjoy it, but certainly the way we talked about it on Code is that they were just throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what stuck, and nothing did. I know I'm enjoying this current season. I think Kay and Peter over on Code are a little iffy on it, but
really?
Yeah. Well, just because they're like,
I really loved it.
I'm liking it too, and I'm thinking, well, and then people are bitching. Oh, Picard dropped an F-bomb last week. He's an old man. Get over it. You know what? It was just it's a lot more real, and you're getting new characters and changes in characters that I think are great. I think 7 of 9 is great on that show. I'm loving my new buddy, the guy who remarried April and I, Mr. Todd Stashwick. I'm loving him as Captain Shaw on that show, and they're hopefully setting some things up that maybe characters will spin off into a new show, because we've been talking about how Star Trek, needs to look to the next program. And if they're going to continue now in this early 25th century timeline, you would imagine they'd want to do it with some characters that they've spent some time, kind of cultivating. And Captain Shaw would totally be one of them. That's why I'm wearing his shirt, USS Titan.
Yep.
But anyway.
I think the key, and my key takeaway from Requels is, I think they're an awesome way to keep a franchise alive with fresh perspective and bring a new audience. But once again, it all comes down to writing. Half the ones that fail is because they're written poorly. It's all fan service, and it's not really doing anything to move the franchise forward creatively. Right. And so when you can nail that, it resonates with people.
Right. Like with Top Gun, Maverick. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
We'll see if the new Transformers requel works or if it doesn't. Hopefully it's better.
Yeah. That was when April said, "Is this supposed to be spun off of Bumblebee?" I said, "I think
we don't know.
Yeah,
nobody knows.
I think it might be, but it's not supposed to be spun off the original. But anyway, yes, we shall see. Todd, it won't be long at all that the summer movie wager will be upon us. The Prince Shizor Trophy will be up for grabs, so we'll have to see if Indiana Jones versus Guardians 3 versus your Transformers movie. What's going to be the king?
We shall see. So that is it for the episode. This is like the reunion episode for Charlie and I. We haven't done this in 2 to 3 weeks. It's been our longest gap, I think, since we've been weekly again.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, I would say we'll never do it again, but I'll be gone again to Vegas in the summertime, and then we're doing the cruise again.
I'm in Europe in a couple weeks.
So I know, and when Todd's not running the stick, there's no show because it's Todd's show, and I'm merely his clapping monkey. But anyway, friends, thank you as always for joining us. Todd, where do people find you out there on the web?
At TOxtra on Twitter for my personal takes, and then check out at SecretFriendsU, SecretFriendsUnite.com, and Patreon.com/SecretFriendsUnite.
Totally awesome. Where you can find me out there, mostly on Twitter at the C3. Go ahead and spell it out. My lovely wife and I, April, we run the USS Grand Petoskey, one of the largest chapters of the International Star Trek Fan Club in the world. If you live in Michigan, or even if you live in Eastern Canada, because I do manage the region, which includes that spot, and you're a Trekker listening to the sound of my voice, want more information, please at me or visit USS Grand Petoskey at that address on the web. So that's it for us. Friends, once again, thanks for coming in. I'm going to tell you that sharing is caring and to keep on trucking.
Be the hero, not the villain.
In a truck.
Go for it! Which is one of the Rocky-like things.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. Visit secretfriendsunite.com for more great shows, articles, news, reviews, and more. Secret Friends Unite podcasts are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and other podcast services around the world. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, you can join us on Facebook or our new Discord server, or follow @SecretFriendsU on Twitter. Please subscribe to Secret Friends Unite on YouTube and visit our merch store at tpublic.com. Just search Secret Friends Unite. Thanks for listening.